There are so many families where they have disabilities or their children do, or with serious illnesses, who, by definition of the condition, have much higher electricity and water bills. This is something I'm quite passionate about, and I put it to Sajid Javid, the Health Secretary, on the show before the spring statement last week. People on oxygen concentrators, people on dialysis machines, people with electric wheelchairs are in panic and shock that their lives are going to be cut off because of these energy rises. Please, as Secretary of State for Health, will you champion those people and make sure that we don't disable their lives going forward with what's about to happen in April? It's not a question. You don't have to answer or give me a commitment
actually,
here.
I want to answer very straightforward. Yes, absolutely. Those are some of the most important people in our society, and that is exactly the kind of people that we should do everything we can to support, including from my department and the NHS.
Thank you. Well, that was before the spring statement, and we have the Deputy Prime Minister joining us now. Now, normally on this show, we don't give politicians pre-notice of any questions, because that's not how things work. However, what I want today is to get an answer, and it isn't the Deputy Prime Minister's department. So we have pre-warned you, and you're well aware that I'm going to ask you this question as a follow-up, so that I hope you can give us a good answer. That was a week ago. What are you doing to help those most vulnerable disabled families with these extortionate rises in electricity bills, Deputy Prime Minister? And thank you for joining us, by the way.
Martin, thank you. And look, cost of living challenges are difficult for everyone, but particularly for disabled families. The answer to your question is, amidst the £20 billion package to deal with the cost of living, £22 billion now after the spring statement, we have certain things. So if you've got a long-term disability, the personal independent payments allow you to take into account living costs. The clip you showed there, the particular family talked about oxygen concentrators, which help for certain types of disabilities, whether it's children or adults. So you can claim back some of the costs, the additional costs you get for those, for example, electricity prices that will be affected by that. Over £150 a year you can get back from the NHS to help fund that. There's a whole range of other things, the energy rebate, the council tax rebate. The latter has a specific disability component. And as you've been talking about on the show, there's £144 million going to councils, which is a discretionary fund. But one of the things we're saying is that you can't always legislate and prescribe for every particular condition. What we know is that local authorities often know the vulnerable in their community best, and therefore this gives them a discretionary pot of funding to be able to target additional support. And of course, disabled families, whether it's children or adults, will disproportionately benefit from that. You're right, it's not my area, it's the Health Secretary's, but I think it's incredibly important. And those are just some of the measures that we're taking, again, as part of a £22 billion package to help with the cost of living across the board.
I'm afraid I don't want to be a damp squib on this, but if we add up the council tax and we add up the loan not loan that's coming in October, I get oxygen concentrators and they are well covered, and I'm very grateful to hear that. But, you know, 350 quid only covers half, roughly, the rise. It isn't enough. I meant to, you know, interview and just let me tell you, it isn't enough. If you had my mailbag, Deputy Prime Minister, if you could see the desperation, if you could hear the desperation of the debt counsellors and the disability charities and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, I mean, there are families in this country with people with disabilities who do not have enough money. And it's not for me to judge you. You're an elected official. But, I mean, people are going to be in a desperate situation about starving or giving their children medicine here. Can you please do more? Please.
Well, look, you are right to judge me. That's what we're here for. All the elected politicians are here, and we've got to do everything we can for the most vulnerable in our society. And I pay tribute to you for raising awareness to it. So I don't want to duck or shrink from it, even though, as I said, it's a combination of the Health Secretary and the Work and Pension Secretary that deal with the benefits side of things. But we are doing as much as we can. We will always look if there are better ways for doing it. But I think the combination of dealing with the long-term disabled. The very specific targeted measures that I think you've recognised, like the ability to claim back the electricity costs for specific things like oxygen concentrators, coupled with saying, well, we can't prescribe from the centre everything, but local authorities know who their vulnerable communities are. And there are other measures across the board that the Prime Minister announced at the spring statement, the raising of the national insurance threshold, the extension of the national living wage. They will help families across the board. But of course, there are many disabled families in work. Those will apply as well. But I take your challenge to constantly look at how we can do more for the most vulnerable in our society. I think that is one of the overriding priority for us, to look after the most at risk, the most vulnerable, as we go through what is going to be a really tough time.
In the white paper on the warm home discount, which is currently £140 rising to £150, that helps some of the poorest, it's effectively our form of a social tariff in this country. There is a proposal that effectively means 200,000 people with disability living allowance and personal independence payment, in other words, with disabilities, will be taken out of getting the warm home discount. So while we're talking about doing more, there's actually a proposal that will currently give them less. That is only a white paper right now. Can we make sure that doesn't happen, please?
Look, I'm very happy to take that back, talk to ministers about that and see. But of course, we're constantly looking to make sure we're targeting our measures in the right way, in the right place. But you've got huge expertise. You've already done a great job on the Chancellor. And look, it's part of the job of governments and ministers to come on these shows, not to have the usual ding-dong, but to listen and to learn. What I would just say is, across the board, the amount that this government and the UK spends on disability support is the second highest in the G7 of major economies. So whilst there's always more we can do, and I don't just accept, I embrace the challenge that you've given us today, I would say that we've got a pretty strong record if you look at other major economies, but let's always look at how we can refine and improve and strengthen the offer we provide for the most vulnerable.
Well, I'll give you one more note, if you forgive me, sir. In February, the Chancellor announced his £350 package, that the structure of that package we'll ignore, which was to cover half the rise in April. There are many people panicked about what will happen in October. I'm one of them, panicked for people because it's going to go up again. What would be very helpful is forward guidance from the Chancellor that there will be more packages to cover half the rise in October, to at least give people some peace of mind the government will be helping. At the moment, we're hearing we don't know what's going to happen in October. We do. We're a third of the way through the month, the assessment period, and it's been the highest peak of wholesale energy prices, which is what sets it. We know, we have a pretty good idea it's going up a lot in October. The mental health impacts of this cost of living crisis, I chair a money and mental health charity, are huge as well. People are having great anxiety. Forward guidance rather than waiting would be needed. Don't answer, because I know it's not your department, but you promised you'd take a note. Susanna, go on to another subject. Why don't you?
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint Mr Raab, because I'm going to enter into the normal ding-dong now, and that is to ask you, as Justice Secretary, was the law broken at the top of government during lockdown?
Well, if you're referring, Susanna, to the 20 fixed penalty notices handed out by the police, it's clear that that's happened in relation to those individuals concerned, because the law was breached.
Did the Prime Minister then tell the truth when he told the House of Commons repeatedly that there was no party, there were no COVID rules broken?
Well, he answered to the best of his knowledge, the best of his ability and the best of his understanding, but precisely because it was challenged and claims were made and it was important to have full transparency and accountability, that he did three things. First of all, initiated the Sue Gray review, which came back with this interim report. Second of all, acted on that, and he's apologised for the things that went wrong that shouldn't have happened. And there's been an overhaul of Number 10. People have already left the department. Others, the Number 10, and others have come in. And thirdly, of course, made it very clear there'll be full cooperation with the Metropolitan Police investigation, and that will continue for as long as that process is engaged. And there will also be then an opportunity for Sue Gray's findings to be updated, and the PM's been clear there'll be full transparency around that. OK, you've raised the point that people have left their jobs because they were found to have breached the law. Should that also apply to the Prime Minister? Well, look, the Prime Minister hasn't been handed down a fixed penalty notice, and I'm not going to comment or prejudge anything that the police is doing. All I'm saying is, because I've been asked the question earlier in all the other interviews I've done, is in relation to the fixed penalty notices, that's the criminal element. But of course, there's internal disciplinary proceedings the civil service will conduct. And as evidence, there's also been the overhaul of Number 10 that the PM carried about well ahead of getting any of the police conclusions.
Yes, but the point is, and the reason that you're asked this question repeatedly, is that if the Prime Minister himself is found to have broken the law, attended what were clearly parties, and perhaps not been transparent about that to the House, should he also be held accountable and lose his position?
Well, I think he's been clear that there'll be transparency and accountability for everyone. But what you'll understand as a Justice Secretary and Lord Chancellor, I'm not going to comment on investigations that are ongoing. I just can't do that. It's not the right or proper thing for me to do.
You could, though, if you forgive me, as the Justice Secretary, what is the threshold of behaviour that dictates whether a minister or Prime Minister should resign when there is being criminality? What is a criminal charge? Is that something they should resign, or is it absolutely fine for a Prime Minister or a minister to have a criminal charge and stay in office? Where would you draw the line, is what I'm asking.
Well, I'm not sure whether you meant to say it this way, but a criminal charge is not the same thing as a punishment or a conviction. We've got the presumption of innocence. So
forgive me,
a fixed penalty notice. If a Prime Minister is found to have broken the law and is issued a fine, as Justice Secretary, are you comfortable with that person staying Prime Minister?
Susanna, I'm not comfortable preempting, commenting on or prejudging the outcome of any criminal investigation conducted by the police, or indeed any other investigation in relation to COVID regulations. I just don't do it. Sorry. It comes with the job.
As Justice Secretary, you can't comment on whether somebody at the top of government should stay in their job if they have been found to have broken the law.
I'm not. But you're asking me.
I'm not even asking about the Prime Minister in this situation. I'm asking generally, theoretically.
You're not. You're asking about the Prime Minister. You've made that clear. No, I'm not going to comment on hypothetical questions or speculate on an ongoing police investigation. I'm sorry, Susanna. Come on to the show always and try and be as open and candid with you and engage. But it's just part of my job. I cannot and I should not do that.
Deputy Prime Minister, thank you for joining us, and please, the messages earlier on the cost of living, please take them back to the Cabinet. We are in a desperate situation. Thank you for your time.